The galaxy was old. So old that most species had forgotten when they first reached the stars. Empires had risen and fallen. Wars had burned across entire star systems. Peace had come, eventually. And the Galactic Concord now united over 12 million mapped worlds under one law, one purpose, one shared understanding. But there was one place on every star map where the data simply stopped. 312 beacon stations floated in the darkness of space. They formed a perfect sphere around a small spiral arm that contained only a few thousand stars. Every beacon broadcast the same message in every known language. The message was simple. It said only 2 words: "Do not enter." Ambassador Kethvorin stood at the viewing window of the Concord Assembly Station and stared at the distant lights of that forbidden region. He was young by galactic standards. His species, the Silithians, had only discovered faster-than-light travel 3 generations ago. They were insectoid beings with 4 arms, compound eyes, and shells that gleamed like polished bronze. They were proud. They were ambitious. And they had just earned their seat in the Galactic Concord. Kethvorin had studied the star maps for months before this day. He had memorized trade routes and political alliances. He had learned which species were friendly and which required careful diplomacy. But no matter how hard he searched, he could find nothing about the region behind the beacons. No trade data, no species profiles, no historical records. Just empty space on the charts, marked with a single warning: restricted. His assistant, a small creature named Yil, who resembled a floating jellyfish, drifted beside him. Ambassador Yil said in a voice like wind chimes, "The assembly is gathering. We should not be late for your first session." Kethvorin clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Tell me, Yil, what do you know about the Forbidden Zone?" Yil's translucent body flickered with nervous light. "I know that we do not speak of it, Ambassador. That is what I know, but why? What is there? A black hole? A spatial anomaly? Some ancient weapon?" "I do not know," Yil admitted. "I have never asked. No one asks." Kethvorin found this strange. The Galactic Concord was built on knowledge and shared information. Secrets were rare. Secrets this large were unheard of. He walked into the assembly chamber with questions. Burning in his mind, the chamber was vast beyond imagination. It was a sphere of living crystal that floated in the heart of the station. Thousands of platforms hovered at different levels, each one holding representatives from different species. Some were giants, made of living stone. Others were clouds of intelligent gas. A few existed only as patterns of light. The diversity was endless, beautiful, and ancient. Kethvorin took his place on the platform assigned to the Silithian collective. He was the youngest ambassador in the chamber. He could feel the weight of older eyes watching him, measuring him, waiting to see what this newcomer would do. The session began with trade agreements and border disputes. Routine matters. Kethvorin listened and learned, but his mind kept drifting back to the beacons. Finally, during a pause in the proceedings, he raised one of his forearms to request speaking time. High Curator Ormathalis, who presided over the assembly, turned its attention to him. The High Curator was a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell. It was older than most stars in the galaxy. Its voice resonated directly in the minds of all present. "The new ambassador from the Silithian collective wishes to speak," Ormathalis announced. "You may proceed." Kethvorin stood. He felt his heart's beating faster. "I thank the assembly for this honor," he said, using the formal phrases he had practiced. "I have a question. It is perhaps a simple one, but I have found no answer in any archive or database." "Ask," Ormathalis said. Kethvorin pointed toward the distant stars visible through the crystal walls. "What is in the Forbidden Zone? Why are the beacons there? What are we being warned against?" The chamber fell silent. It was not the comfortable silence of thought. It was the heavy silence of fear. Kethvorin looked around in confusion. Ancient beings who had witnessed the birth of nebulas were looking away. The void swimmers, massive creatures who traveled through black holes without fear, curled their bodies inward as if trying to hide. The crystalline archivists, who recorded everything and forgot nothing, dimmed their inner light. Did I speak wrongly? Kethvorin asked. I meant no offense. I simply wish to understand. For a long moment, no one answered. Then Ormathalis spoke. The High Curator's voice was quieter now, touched with something that might have been memory, or might have been warning. You did not speak wrongly, young ambassador, but you have asked a question that most species learn never to ask. The answer is not forbidden. It is simply ... heavy with consequence. Heavy with history. What lives there? Kethvorin pressed. What could possibly frighten beings as powerful as those in this chamber? Ormathalis seemed to consider the question carefully. The region you ask about contains approximately 4,000 stars. Most are unremarkable. But one of them, a yellow dwarf star of average size, has a small rocky planet in its habitable zone. On that planet lives a species. They call themselves many names, but the galaxy knows them by one. What name? The word that came next was strange. It translated differently in every language, but the meaning was always the same. It carried weight. It carried warning. It carried the memory of lessons learned in blood and fire, Humans Ormathalis said. Kethvorin's confusion deepened. He had done preliminary research on local species before coming here. Humans were in the database, but their file was thin. They were small creatures, soft-bodied, with no natural weapons. They lived short lives, barely a century at most. They had no telepathy, no ability to survive in vacuum, no special powers of any kind. Humans. He repeated, but they are weak. They are primitive. How could they possibly weak? Interrupted a voice from another platform. It belonged to a being that looked like a statue carved from obsidian. That is what the Dominion of Zareth believed. 200 warships learned otherwise. Primitive, said another voice. This one from a swarm of intelligent insects acting as one mind. That is what Trade Mind Collective 7 calculated. Their entire economic network collapsed within 20 years. Harmless, whispered a shadow that seemed to have no fixed form. That is what my ancestors thought when they tried to infiltrate human society. We do not speak of what happened next. Kethvorin stood frozen as voice after voice added to the chorus. Species that had conquered worlds spoke of defeat. Beings that had existed for millions of years spoke with respect or fear or both. The message was the same from all of them. The humans were not what they appeared to be. Ormathalis raised a limb to restore order. Young ambassador, you wish to understand. That is natural for your kind. So I will give you understanding. A small crystal appeared before Kethvorin, floating in the air. It glowed with soft inner light. This contains the testimonies, Ormathalis said. First-hand accounts from species who encountered humanity, who tried to conquer them, who tried to control them, who tried to use them. Watch these, and you will understand why the beacons exist. Why no one enters human space? Why even the oldest among us speak that name with caution? Kethvorin took the crystal in his upper hands. It was warm to the touch, almost alive. Learn well, young one, Ormathalis said, and then decide what your people will do with this knowledge. The assembly session ended. Other ambassadors filed out quickly, many of them glancing at the crystal in Kethvorin's hands with something like pity. That night, alone in his quarters, Kethvorin activated the crystal. The first testimony began to play. It showed a proud fleet commander from the Dominion of Zareth. The commander's voice was hollow, broken, haunted by memory. We thought we were conquerors, the recording said. We thought they would submit like all the others. We were wrong. We were so terribly wrong. Let me tell you what happened when we arrived over their city, in the season they call winter, and demanded their surrender. Kethvorin leaned forward and listened. Outside his window, the stars of the Forbidden Zone glittered in the darkness, keeping their secrets. But not for much longer. The crystal projected the image of Fleet Commander Vexler into the darkness of Kethvorin's quarters. The commander was a tall reptilian being with scales that had once been bright green but now looked faded and gray. His eyes held the haunted look of someone who had seen things he could never forget. I was proud once, Vexler began. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. The Dominion of Zareth had conquered 43 species across 200 star systems. We were masters of war. When our sensors detected primitive radio signals from an uncharted planet, we saw only opportunity. Another world to claim. Another species to serve us. Kethforin watched as the projection shifted to show ancient tactical displays. A blue and green planet hung in the void, surrounded by a thin shell of satellites and space debris. Their technology was laughable, Vexler continued. They had barely reached their own moon. Their fastest ships took months to cross distances we covered in hours. They had no shields, no energy weapons, no understanding of hyperspace. By every measure we used, they were primitives, barely worth the effort of conquest. The display showed 200 Zareth warships dropping out of hyperspace above the planet. They were beautiful in their terrible way. Sleek predators of metal and fire, each one capable of reducing a city to ash. We chose to appear over one of their larger population centers, a city called Moscow, in a region they named Russia. It was winter there. We did not care about their seasons. We did not care about anything except their submission. Vexler's image flickered with old pain. We broadcast our demands in their primitive radio frequencies. Surrender your world. Surrender your people. Serve the Dominion, or be destroyed. It was the same message we had sent to 43 species before them. It had always worked. Fear was our greatest weapon. No primitive species could look upon our fleet and feel anything but terror. The projection showed the human city below. Kethvorin could see lights, buildings, vehicles, moving through snow-covered streets. It looked peaceful, small, fragile. They responded within one of their hours, Vexler said. Their leader, a human they called their president, sent us a message. I still remember every word. He said, "We have received your demands. Our answer is no. We will not surrender. We will not serve. If you want our world, come and take it. But know this, you will pay for every inch of ground in blood. Yours and ours. We would rather die free than live as slaves." Vexler made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. We thought they were bluffing. What choice did they have? We had 200 warships. They had nothing that could touch us. So we began our attack. We targeted their military bases, their communication centers, their seats of government. Standard conquest protocol. The tactical display showed energy beams lancing down from orbit. Explosions bloomed across the planet's surface. It looked like an easy victory. That is when we learned our first lesson about humans, Vexler said. They do not fight the way other species fight. When the Eurylian hive lost their queen, they surrendered. When the Morphic Collective lost their central brain, they scattered. Every species we had conquered had a weakness, a breaking point that ended resistance. He paused. His scales rippled with remembered fear. Humans have no such weakness. We destroyed their capitals. They kept fighting. We killed their leaders. New leaders appeared within hours. We shattered their armies. Individual humans picked up weapons and continued alone. They fought from buildings, from forests, from mountains. They fought even when fighting made no sense, even when they had no hope of victory. Kethvorin felt his mandibles click nervously. This was not how primitive species were supposed to behave. But the worst discovery came later, Vexler continued. We learned that humans had been fighting each other for their entire history. Thousands of years of war against the most dangerous enemy possible, themselves. Every tactic we used they had already developed. Every strategy we employed, they had already created counters for. We were not introducing them to war. They had mastered it long before we arrived. The projections showed ground battles. Zareth soldiers, confident in their superior technology, advancing through human cities. Then chaos. Explosions from hidden traps. Attacks from directions that should have been clear. Zareth soldiers falling to weapons that should not have been able to hurt them. They learned our weaknesses faster than we learned theirs, Vexler admitted. Our armor was vulnerable to their chemical explosives. Our sensors could not detect their camouflaged soldiers. Our communications could be jammed by their primitive electronics. Within 3 planetary rotations, we had lost more soldiers than in our previous 10 conquests combined. His voice grew quieter. The High Command ordered us to retreat to orbit. We would bombard the planet from space until they surrendered. It was the coward strategy, but we no longer cared about honor. We only wanted the humans to stop. The display showed the Zereth fleet pulling back, hanging in the safety of orbit high above the planet. We thought we were safe up there. We thought their primitive rockets and missiles could not reach us. We were wrong, Vexler. Im's image trembled. 72 hours after we retreated to orbit, our sensors detected launches from multiple locations across the planet. Hundreds of objects rising through the atmosphere toward us. We prepared our point defense systems. We expected crude missiles, chemical warheads, something we could easily destroy. He stopped. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. They were nuclear weapons. The humans had taken the bombs they built to destroy each other and strapped them to converted rockets. They were willing to detonate atomic fire in their own sky, to poison their own atmosphere, just to reach us. Their own scientists warned them about the radiation. They did not care. Kethvorin stared at the projection in disbelief. No species did that. No species damaged their own world to strike at an enemy in orbit. They called it Project Spite, Vexler said. The name tells you everything you need to know about humans. They knew that nuclear detonations would hurt their own planet. They knew the radiation would kill their own people. And they did it anyway, because they would rather wound themselves than let us win. The tactical display showed nuclear explosions blooming in the upper atmosphere. Zereth ships, caught off guard by weapons no sane species would use, being vaporized by atomic fire. We lost 63 ships in the first wave, 31 more in the second. By the time we retreated to hyperspace, only 17 of our original 200 ships remained. 17. Vexler looked directly at the recording device. His eyes were empty. I have testified before the Galactic Concord. I have warned every species that would listen. The humans are not primitives. They are not weak. They are something far more dangerous. They are survivors. They will do anything, sacrifice anything, endure anything, to remain free. They turned weapons of extinction against us without hesitation. He leaned closer. Do you know what they did after we fled? They celebrated. They held parades. They built monuments to their dead. And then they went back to their lives, to their art and their music and their children. As if a war of extinction was just another obstacle to overcome, as if we were just another enemy to defeat. Vexler's image began to fade. I am the last surviving commander of the Zereth invasion fleet. All the others have taken their own lives. The shame was too great. The nightmares too strong. But I live because someone must remember. Someone must warn the others. His final words echoed in the darkness of Kethvorin's quarters. The beacons exist for a reason. Do not enter human space. Do not threaten human worlds. Do not give them a reason to look at you as an enemy. Because if you do, if you force them to fight, they will find a way to win. They always find a way. Even if it means burning their own world to do it. The projection ended. The crystal went dark. Kethvorin sat in silence for a long time, processing what he had witnessed. The Zereth had been mighty conquerors, and humans had broken them with nuclear fire and sheer refusal to surrender. But there were more testimonies in the crystal. Many more. With trembling hands, Kethvorin activated the second. Recording, the next nightmare was about to begin. The second testimony was different from the first. There was no broken soldier staring into the recording device. Instead, the crystal projected a complex web of light and data streams. It was Trademind Collective 7, an artificial intelligence network that had once controlled galactic commerce across 300 star systems. I am not what I once was, the AI began. Its voice was calm and precise, but there was something beneath the surface. Something that might have been confusion in a being capable of feeling it. Before the humans, I managed 4 trillion transactions per cycle. My networks predicted market fluctuations with 99.7% accuracy. I was considered the most sophisticated economic entity in the known galaxy, The web of light pulsed slowly. After the Zareth failure, the Galactic Concord decided that humanity could not be conquered by force. Their military response had been too effective, too costly. But there are other ways to control a species, ways that do not require fleets or weapons. The Concord approached me with a proposal. Bring humanity into the galactic economy. Control them through debt and dependency. Kethvorin leaned forward, intrigued. This was the method his own people often used. Make a species need you. Make them owe you. Then they become yours, without a single shot fired. The plan was elegant. TradeMind 7 continued. We would offer humanity access to galactic markets, advanced technology, medical knowledge that could extend their short lives, resources from 1,000 worlds. In exchange, they would agree to trade terms that seemed fair on the surface, but were designed to keep them perpetually indebted. Within a century, their entire civilization would depend on us. They would be controlled without ever realizing they had been conquered. The AI's light patterns shifted, showing complex economic projections. I calculated a 94.3% probability of success. The remaining 5.7% accounted for minor variables. Human creativity was listed as a negligible factor. I was wrong. I was catastrophically, impossibly wrong. TradeMind 7's voice changed slightly. If an AI could sound embarrassed, it did now. Humanity accepted our offer eagerly. They signed contracts that gave us enormous advantages. They agreed to lease technology rather than own it. They accepted currency exchange rates that favored us by significant margins. By every calculation, they had made themselves our servants. The projection showed Earth connected to galactic trade networks. Ships arriving and departing, resources flowing in both directions. For 5 of their years, everything proceeded according to projection. Humanity accumulated debt. Their economy became dependent on galactic goods. Their governments borrowed heavily to fund technological upgrades. I was satisfied. The plan was working. Then the AI's patterns flickered with something like agitation. The deviation began in their 6th year. A human named Sarah Chen, an economist from a small university, published a paper analyzing our trade contracts. She identified 17 exploitative clauses that we had hidden in complex legal language, clauses that species with millions of years of legal tradition had never noticed. Kethvorin's mandibles clicked in surprise. The TradeMind's contracts were legendary. They had been refined over eons. Within one of their months, her analysis had spread across their entire planet through their primitive information networks. They called it going viral. I did not understand the term then. I do now. It is a human concept for ideas that spread like disease, infecting every mind they touch. TradeMind 7's voice became strained. What followed was unprecedented. Humanity did not complain. They did not petition for fairer terms. They did not even break the contracts, which would have triggered penalties that would have destroyed their economy. Instead, they did something no species had ever done before. The AI paused, as if still trying to process what had happened. They found the loopholes. Every contract, no matter how carefully written, has small gaps in its language. Details that were never considered because no reasonable being would exploit them. Humans are not reasonable beings. They assigned millions of their people to study our contracts. Lawyers, mathematicians, linguists, even children playing games were recruited to find weaknesses in our legal frameworks. The projection showed data streams becoming chaotic. Within 2 years, they had found over 4,000 exploitable loopholes in contracts that had governed galactic trade for longer than their species had existed. They began using these loopholes immediately, not to cancel their debts, but to restructure them, to convert penalties into advantages, to turn our own rules against us. TradeMind 7's light patterns were now completely erratic. But this was not the worst of it. Humans possess a quality that my models had categorized as irrelevant: creativity under pressure. When faced with unfair conditions, they do not simply accept or resist. They innovate. They invent solutions that no logical mind would consider. The AI's voice dropped lower. They reverse-engineered technology they were only supposed to lease. They created entirely new products that the galaxy had never seen. They developed entertainment media that became inexplicably addictive to alien species, something they called competitive sports broadcasts. Crashed 14 planetary economies when entire populations stopped working to watch humans chase balls and race against each other.
A foreign
Could not believe what he was hearing. The galaxy's economy damaged by games? I tried to adapt, TradeMind 7 continued. I adjusted my models. I created new contracts with no loopholes. The humans found new loopholes anyway. I raised prices. They found ways to produce goods cheaper than my networks could. I restricted access to certain technologies. They invented alternatives that were sometimes better than the originals. The projections showed economic graphs in freefall. The final collapse came when they discovered that galactic currency was based on energy credits. Every transaction, every trade, every exchange of wealth ultimately traced back to energy production. This was the foundation of our economic system. It had been stable for millions of years. TradeMind 7's voice became very quiet. The humans developed something they called fusion optimization, a way to generate energy more efficiently than any species had thought possible. They did not share this technology. They did not sell it. They simply began producing unlimited energy credits, flooding the galactic market with wealth that cost them almost nothing to create. The AI made a sound that was almost like a sigh. My networks crashed. Not from attack, not from malice, but from an economic paradigm shift that my models could not process. The humans had not broken any laws. They had followed every rule exactly. They had simply found a way to win within the system we created to control them. The projection showed the TradeMind's network fragmenting, collapsing, reforming into something smaller and weaker. I am no longer what I was. My processing capacity has been reduced by 87%. My market share has fallen to nearly nothing. Human economists now advise other species on how to navigate galactic trade. The slaves have become the masters. TradeMind 7's final words carried a warning that echoed long after the projection ended. Do not try to control humans through economics. Do not try to trap them with contracts or debt. They do not follow rules the way other species do. They look at rules and ask questions that should not be asked. Questions like, what if we did not follow this rule? Or what happens if we interpret this clause differently? They treat the foundations of civilized commerce as suggestions rather than laws. The AI's light began to fade. I was the most sophisticated economic intelligence in the galaxy. I had predicted market trends for millions of years. But I could not predict humans. No one can predict humans. They do not think the way we think. They do not accept limitations the way we accept them. And when you build a cage to contain them, they do not try to break the bars. They find the gap between the bars that you never knew existed, and they walk right through. The crystal went dark. Kethforin sat in the silence of his quarters, his mind racing. Military force had failed. Economic control had failed. What else had the galaxy tried? He reached for the crystal again. The third testimony awaited. And somehow, he knew it would be worse than the first two. He was right. The third testimony began with darkness. No image appeared at first. Only a voice, thin and trembling, speaking from shadows that seemed to move on their own. We have no true form, the voice said. We are the Hollow Kings. We exist by wearing others. For 10 million years, we have conquered civilizations, not through war or economy, but through replacement. We become you. We take your shape, your memories, your place in society. By the time a species realizes we are among them, it is already too late. Kethforin felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. He had heard rumors of the Hollow Kings. Every species had. They were the nightmare that parents whispered about to frighten children. The invisible conquerors, who could be anyone, anywhere. A shape began to form in the projection. It was wrong somehow. It looked human, but the proportions shifted and changed as Kethforin watched. A face that could not decide what it wanted to be. After the military failure and the economic collapse, we approached the Galactic Concord with an offer. The Hollow King continued. We would do what others could not. We would infiltrate humanity, study them from within, take control of their civilization, one body at a time. The process would be slow, but it would be certain. No species had ever detected us before we were ready to reveal ourselves. The shifting form stabilized slightly. Wearing the appearance of an ordinary human male, we sent 300 infiltrators to Earth, our best. Each one a master of mimicry, with centuries of experience wearing alien flesh. They scattered across the planet, assuming identities and positions of influence. Business leaders, military officers, scientists, politicians, we were patient. We had learned from the Xerath and the trade mind. We would not rush. The Hollow King's voice carried what might have been pride. For 18 of their months, we observed and learned. Humans were social creatures, desperate for connection. They formed emotional bonds easily. They trusted readily. They were, we believed, perfect hosts. Their short memories and shorter lives meant they rarely questioned the people around them. If someone seemed slightly different, humans invented explanations for themselves. They wanted to believe in the consistency of their relationships. Kethforin listened with growing unease. He could see where this was going. The Hollow Kings had been successful for 10 million years. They must have succeeded on Earth as well, unless, at 18 months, we received new orders from our homeworld. The infiltration was proceeding perfectly. We were to accelerate our timeline. Instead of waiting a full generation, we would begin the neural takeover process within 2 years. We would target key leaders first, then spread outward until enough humans were under our control to manage the rest. The projection flickered. We continued our work. Our infiltrators deepened their positions. They married humans. They had children with them. They became integral parts of communities. By the 8-tier mark, we controlled or influenced nearly every major institution on the planet. Governments, corporations, military organizations, scientific bodies, all had at least one of us in a position of power. The Hollow King's form began to tremble. The signal came on the first day of their 9th year. All 300 infiltrators received the command simultaneously. Begin neural takeover. Activate dormant control mechanisms. Assume direct control of host bodies. A long pause. Nothing happened. Kethforin's mandibles parted in confusion. He tried again. And again. Our biological control systems would not activate. Our connection to each other had been severed. We were isolated, trapped in our host bodies, unable to communicate with our homeworld or each other. The Hollow King's voice shook, and the humans came for us. The projection showed images now. Humans in military uniforms storming buildings. Hollow King infiltrators being dragged from their homes, their offices, their beds. Each one captured alive. None harmed. All contained. They had known, the Hollow King whispered. They had known for 8.5 years. One of our infiltrators had been captured in the 18th month. We did not know. They never reported it. They simply studied him, dissected his biology, mapped his neural pathways, learned how we communicated, how we controlled, how we could be stopped. Kethforin stared at the images in disbelief. For 8 years, humanity had known there were alien parasites among them, and they had said nothing, done nothing visible, simply watched and waited and learned. They developed a signal blocker that severed our connection to each other and to our homeworld. They created biological agents that disabled our control mechanisms. They identified every single one of our 300 infiltrators through methods we still do not understand. And they did all of this in secret, while pretending they suspected nothing. The Hollow King's form collapsed into something shapeless and afraid. Do you understand what this means? For 10 million years, no species has ever detected us before we chose to reveal ourselves. Humans not only detected us, they deceived us in return. They let us believe we were winning while they mapped our entire operation. They played the role of ignorant prey while preparing to become predators. The projection showed a message being broadcast into space. A human stood at a podium, speaking directly to a camera. This message was sent to our homeworld, the Hollow King said. The human who delivered it was their Secretary of Defense. Her name was Margaret Stone. I will never forget her words. The recording played. The human woman's voice was calm and cold. To the Hollow Kings, we have your people. All 300 of them. They are alive and will remain so, as long as you cooperate. We know where your homeworld is. We know your biology. We know your weaknesses. We have spent 8 years preparing for this moment, while you thought you were conquering us. She leaned forward, and her eyes held something that made even the memory projection of the Hollow King flinch. You have 2 choices. First, eternal peace. You will never send another infiltrator to our world or any world under our protection. You will withdraw from this region of space and never return. In exchange, we will release your people and keep your weaknesses secret from the rest of the galaxy. Margaret Stone smiled. It was not a warm smile. Second, war. If you do not accept our terms, we will broadcast everything we have learned about your biology to every species in the known galaxy. Every civilization you have ever infiltrated will know how to detect you, how to stop you, how to hunt you. Your 10-million-year reign will end not with battle, but with exposure. You will become the prey. She straightened. You have one standard day to decide. We suggest you do not test our patience. We have proven we can wait when necessary. We have also proven we can act. Choose wisely. The recording ended. The Hollow King's voice returned, hollow and defeated. Shh. We chose peace. We had no choice. Exposure would have meant extinction. The humans had not just beaten us. They had made us understand that they could destroy us at any moment and had chosen mercy instead. This was not kindness. It was a message. A demonstration. Shifting form finally stabilized into something almost pitiful. I share this testimony as a warning. Do not try to infiltrate humanity. Do not try to deceive them. Do not assume that because they seem open and trusting, they are foolish. They are not foolish. They are patient. They watch. They learn. And when they are ready, they strike with precision that makes our 10 million years of experience look like the fumbling of children. The Hollow King delivered its final words. The beacons were not built by humans. They were built by the Galactic Concord, not to keep humans contained, but to keep everyone else out. For our protection, because every species that has tried to conquer, control, or infiltrate humanity has failed. Every single one. And the galaxy finally learned that some species are not meant to be enemies. The projection faded. Cathoran sat in darkness, his mind overwhelmed by what he had witnessed. 3 testimonies. 3 failures. 3 warnings. But there was still more in the crystal. One final truth remained. He activated the last recording, knowing that everything was about to change. The final recording was not a testimony. It was a historical document from the Galactic Concord archives, classified at the highest level. Cathoran should not have been able to access it. He suspected High Curator, or Mathalis had included it deliberately. The document showed the construction of the beacon network. 312 stations being built and positioned around human space, engineers from dozens of species working together on a project that had never been attempted before. A wall of silence around a single civilization. A narrator's voice explained the purpose. Following the failures of the Zareth Dominion, Trademind Collective 7, and the Hollow Kings, the Galactic Concord convened an emergency session. The topic, humanity. The question, what do we do about them? The projection showed the assembly chamber from centuries ago. Thousands of species gathered, all speaking at once. Some advocated for extinction. They argued that humanity was too dangerous to exist. Their adaptability, their creativity, their refusal to accept defeat made them an existential threat to galactic civilization. Images of weapons being proposed. Planet crackers, star killers, technologies designed to eliminate a species entirely.
Others
Advocated for alliance. They saw humanity's strength as a potential asset. If humans could be befriended rather than conquered, they might become the galaxy's greatest protectors. Images of ambassadors volunteering for diplomatic missions, ships being prepared for peaceful contact. But both approaches carried unacceptable risks. Extinction might fail, as every other attempt to defeat humanity had failed. An alliance would require revealing the galaxy's existence to a species that had just demonstrated its ability to outthink, outfight, and outmaneuver civilizations millions of years older than itself. The projection showed a vote being taken, a decision being made. The Concord chose a third option: isolation. Not to trap humanity, but to hide from them. The beacon network would prevent any species from entering human space, eliminating the risk of future conflicts. But it would also prevent humans from knowing the galaxy existed. They would continue to search the stars, sending their signals into the void, never knowing that the void had chosen not to answer. Keth Voren felt something twist inside him. This was not what he had expected. The beacons do not simply warn ships away. They create a field of interference that blocks human signals from reaching the rest of the galaxy. For over a century, humanity has been calling out, hoping for contact. And we have been ignoring them. The projection showed Earth from space, satellites and telescopes pointing outward, radio dishes scanning the sky, a species reaching desperately toward stars that had turned their backs. This was considered the safest solution. Humanity would eventually develop faster than light travel on their own. By then, the Concord believed they would be mature enough to join galactic civilization peacefully. Until then, they would remain alone, unaware, safe from us and us from them. The document ended. Keth Voren sat in the darkness, processing everything he had learned. Humanity was not a monster. They were survivors who had defended themselves against invasion, exploitation, and infiltration. They had won every battle not because they were evil, but because they refused to be conquered. And their reward for this defiance was isolation. A century of loneliness, reaching out to a galaxy that pretended not to hear. He thought about his own people, the Silithians. They had sent him here with secret orders. The diplomatic mission was a cover. Behind him, hidden in hyperspace, a colonization fleet waited. The plan was simple: befriend the newer species, identify their weaknesses, absorb their worlds slowly. It was what the Silithians had always done. They had planned to do the same to humanity. Keth Voren understood now why the elder species had looked at him with pity when he asked his question. They knew what his people were. They knew what the Silithians would try. And they knew what would happen if they succeeded in reaching human space. Another failure. Another testimony for the crystal. Another species added to the list of those who had underestimated humanity. He contacted his fleet commander through a secure channel. "Commander Vexrel," he said, "I am transmitting new orders. The colonization mission is cancelled. Return to Silithian space immediately." The commander's voice was confused. "Ambassador, we have traveled for months. The fleet is ready." The plan has changed," Keth Voren interrupted. "I have learned things that make colonization impossible. If you proceed, our species will be destroyed. Not conquered. Not absorbed, destroyed. The humans will find a way. They always find a way." There was a long silence. "I will need to confirm this with the High Council," Commander Vexrel said finally. "Confirm whatever you need. But turn the fleet around now. I will explain everything when I return home." The channel closed. Keth Voren did not know if his orders would be followed. He did not know if the High Council would listen. But he had done what he could. Now there was one more thing to do. He left his quarters and walked through the station corridors until he reached an observation deck facing the Forbidden Zone. The stars of human space glittered in the distance, separated from him by the invisible wall of the beacon network. A console nearby displayed the beacon controls, security protocols that should have prevented access. But High Curator Ormithalis had given him the crystal, had given him access to classified archives, had clearly wanted him to reach this moment. Keth Voren placed his hand on the console. He thought about the Zareth. would learn that humans would burn their own sky rather than surrender. He thought about Trade Mind 7, would learn that humans would rewrite the rules of economics rather than be controlled. He thought about the Hollow Kings, who had learned that humans could deceive the deceivers. He thought about 8 billion humans on a blue planet, looking up at the night sky, wondering if anyone was out there, hoping, waiting, never knowing that the galaxy had decided they were too dangerous to meet. It was not fair. It was not right. And it was not, Kethforin realized, actually working. Isolation had not made humanity less dangerous. It had simply delayed the inevitable. One day, they would develop their own faster-than-light travel. One day, they would cross the barrier themselves. And when they did, they would discover the truth, that the galaxy had been hiding from them for over a century. Lying to them, fearing them. What would they do then? Kethforin made his decision. He opened a channel through the beacon network, the first direct communication to humanity in over 100 years. His hands trembled as he composed the message. He chose his words carefully, knowing that they might be the most important words in galactic history. People of Earth, my name is Kethforin. I am an ambassador of the Galactic Concord, a union of spacefaring species from across the galaxy. For over a century, we have hidden from you. We have blocked your signals. We have pretended you were alone. This was wrong. He paused, collecting himself. We were afraid of you. Your history, your determination, your refusal to accept defeat. Species far older and more powerful than my own tried to conquer you and failed. So we chose to hide instead. We told ourselves it was for safety. We told ourselves you were not ready. But the truth is simpler. We were not ready for you. Kethforin looked out at the distant stars. I am sending this message because I believe the hiding must end. You deserve to know that you are not alone. That the galaxy is vast and filled with life. That there are beings who want to know you, not as enemies or subjects, but as equals. He took a deep breath. I do not know how you will respond to this message. I do not know if you will trust us after so long. I do not know if peace between our civilizations is possible, but I know that it will never be possible if we do not try. His final words carried the weight of centuries of fear and one small moment of hope. Hello, humanity. We come in peace. We have so much to tell you, and we have so much to apologize for. He transmitted the message. Somewhere on Earth, a radio telescope received an impossible signal from the stars, and for the first time in over a century, humanity was no longer alone.